Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Hello everybody, it's good to talk to you guys again. I'm doing this Wednesday cast on a Friday because my partner and I have been pretty busy moving into a new place. So yay for new beginnings. We're finally getting settled though, so I can get back into the swing of things. We have a lot to discuss. Some things that are not my favorite topics, like Taylor Swift and true crime. I used to be a huge true crime fan, and I'm not so much anymore. So we'll get into that. Taylor Swift has a new documentary coming out, fresh on the heels of her big, life-shattering album, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a very big Taylor Swift fan, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And what I think of her, and what I think of her ultimately doesn't really matter. I'm telling you what's going on and about the documentary, and I'll throw in my... Tan France has a new show called Next in Fashion. It's a new competition reality-based series. Basically, America's Next Top Model meets Project Runway. So we'll talk a little bit about that. He co-hosts with Alexa Chung and Eliza Schlesinger. It took me a while to get that. It's Schlesinger. I watched with Tyler her new Netflix special last night. It's her fourth show, and it's called Unveiled because she just got married. So I'll give my little review of that. And we'll talk a little bit about Baby Yoda and Aaron Hernandez, the Netflix crime special that it's just come to, and is all over headlines everywhere. It's on Twitter and Instagram, on the news, everything. And then Sabrina Part 3 just got released, and we'll talk a little bit about that trailer. So thank you for hanging in there. We're just going to dive right in. So Taylor Swift just released her album Lover, and it was, lauded from critics everywhere. I don't understand why, but Taylor Swift still has a pretty big following somehow. I'm not exactly sure why she's relevant. She's always trending, from using country music as an in to breaking into the music scene and quickly ditching it, to using politics in her songs and, jumping on board with politics. She's always doing things. It seems to me like she's always doing things to trend. I've thought for a while in my mind, reading her lyrics that she writes, she's a good writer. She just has a poor personality. She doesn't seem like she's very original at all. It just seems like she is the ultimate, basic white girl. She jumps on whatever trend is poppin', and, she rides the wave and then jumps right off. But she has a new documentary, and it's called Miss Americana. Also a very bold title. It comes from one of her songs on Lover is called Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince, which is not a bad song. It's not bad. It's probably one of the better ones on the album. And that song kind of is about, she draws a metaphor between, America and the American high school experience, and how high school is supposed to be, this great time. I don't know who ordained that, because it's not. I don't think anybody has had a perfect high school experience. But she says that's what the song is based about, and she kind of ties in, politics and how America's not what she thought it was. I mean, girl, it's America. Like, what world are you living in? So that's her little metaphor. I guess she took that song title, and that's the name of her documentary. And at first, whenever I saw it was called Miss Americana, I said, wow, that's bold. Calling yourself Miss Americana, calling yourself, like, giving yourself that name, like, you represent this country, because not my celebrity. I'm not, I don't stand by Taylor Swift. So it's opening at the Sundance Film Festival, a week before it premieres on Netflix. So I believe it's coming to Netflix January 31st. So I think it's coming out at the Sundance Film Festival a week before that. The 24th, I read. Not exactly sure. Don't quote me. I guess if you can get tickets, you can go see it early, or Twitter's going to be, freaking out with everything. But yeah, that's the next big thing. We didn't get a lot of, coverage on it. I just saw a trailer today. Apparently it's going to be kind of deep. A reveal of her life. That's what the trailer said. But honestly, what do we not know? Because she kind of puts her whole life online. And she's a celebrity. We know a catalog of every single person she's dated. So what can you really hide? We know all about everything that went down at the Grammys a couple of years back. We know through her songs about everybody she fights with. She doesn't lack, in the drama department, and we hear all about it. So this is the summary. A transformational period in her life as she learns to embrace her role as not only a songwriter and performer, but as a woman. Okay. That's what I got. I would roll my eyes through the whole entire thing. So I'm probably not going to watch it. She's not, she's a good role model, as she's, kind of washed out in a sense. You'll never hear an F-bomb coming from Taylor Swift's mouth. In my opinion, that's, boring. But I guess that's why she's remained relevant for so long. It kind of, if she's representing, American girls as a whole, it really doesn't represent us very well, because we're not perfect and we're not boring, kind of wild, kind of out there, make bad choices. And I feel like she just hides behind this little tiny shell that's not interesting and not authentic. And she does things to please people. She seems like a big people pleaser. And that's something that endlessly is a pet peeve of mine. Whenever people mute their opinions to kind of please other people, they bandwagon and ride things that are popular and don't speak out for what they believe, because they fear, judgment. That's something that just annoys the crap out of me. So Taylor Swift, not exactly my can of beans, but the documentary, maybe we'll see something different. Maybe we'll see, a more real side. Although if that hasn't already come out in her music, her kind of, passive aggressive, she doesn't just come out with how she feels. She sings about it in a very passive aggressive, cupcake, pink icing kind of lace covered way. It has to be sweet. It has to be a good girl. Everything that, we're trying to fight against in feminism, she has to, reinforce. So that's coming out on January 31st. Check it out if you want. That's what's new on Netflix. Coming up, we'll talk about Tan France and his new show. You might know of Tan France from Queer Eye, the hit show. I'll give a little background. I watched the whole first season. Didn't watch the Japan season. It just wasn't as easy to access as the first one. It wasn't as easily digestible. It was kind of hard, being that it was a translated series. I bet it's done really great in Japan, though. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Okay, so before we left, we talked about Taylor Swift and her little, documentary that she has coming out. Not the only documentary that is really spicy right now. There's an Aaron Hernandez documentary that just came out, and I had no idea what it was. Looks pretty interesting. I'm not even going to front. Will I watch it? No. Will I talk about it? Yes. So that's later on. We'll talk about the Aaron Hernandez documentary. But right now, Tan France, or, Tan from Queer Eye, he's part of the Fab Five from Queer Eye, the show that premiered a couple of years ago and just came out with the spin-off Queer Eye. We're in Japan. And the show is kind of like not a home improvement, like a self-improvement, like feel-good, kind of reality-based show. I loved this show. I hopped on it a little bit late, but it totally, I couldn't stop watching it whenever I finally did start watching it. And of course, if there are any fans of the show, you know that it was very popular in the 90s, and they kind of like revamped it, brought it back with all new people. And so there is a lifestyle section, like there's Karamo. I'll just go over the characters real quick. He does, therapy, self-care, self-love, psychology, that kind of aspect. So how the people talk to themselves, how their clients talk to themselves, and self-talks, and, positivity and lifestyle changes that you can make, that it's like health and happiness based on psychology, and kind of more on that side. And then there's Bobby, and he does the interior. So how your space really changes the way you live your life. He revamps, remodels, does the architecture, all the stuff with the home. And then you have Jonathan Van Ness, who does the hair. He's the hairstyle guy, and he has his own segment just kind of on hair, which is pretty cool. Then you have Anthony, the heartthrob, and he does food. And then finally you have Tan, and he does the fashion. So Tan has his own show now called Next in Fashion that is coming to Netflix soon. So it's a reality-based kind of competition-esque show. Think like America's Next Top Model meets Project Runway, meets Glow Up, meets Skin Wars, meets all of these different competition shows. It's a competition reality show. I love these shows. This is most of what I watch. I watch a lot of reality TV. And basically, it's kind of like a Project Runway. Like, it's a glorified Project Runway. And the trailer was super cute. It was set to that Dance Monkey song, and super glamorous, like something I'd actually watch. Like, I will probably actually watch it. So he hosts the show with Alexa Chung, the fashion designer, and it's all of these, designers that have pieces, they're kind of not prolific, but they created pieces that people wear that nobody knew about. For some reason, the careers didn't take off, or, they're just not mainstream, and like the fashion world, they're not big designers, they're not big names, but they have big contributions. So, for example, somebody created apple bottom jeans, and she's going to be featured on the show. So it's all of these different designers, and the winner gets $250K and a fashion debut with Net-a-Porter. So Net-a-Porter is going to pick up their line if they win, and they'll become the next big thing in fashion. So I'm down to watch it. It's coming to Netflix later this month, later January. And Tan from Queer Eye, if you like Queer Eye, is going to be hosting that. So that's what's coming new to Netflix. I think it's super interesting that these reality shows are so popular. Less and less on Netflix do you see, dramas. I mean, you still have your fair share of dramas. Superheroes seem to be a huge thing, but most of what I watch is reality, and there is a huge crime wave. It's just like bingeable crime series. The Circle is super popular. Reality-based TV shows, like you had Glow Up that just came out a couple of, 2 months ago. And people really, the fashion and beauty industry is booming right now. So shows that are based off of, fashion, beauty, hair, makeup, social media, and stuff like that are just really, really common right now. We're kind of, at least on these streaming services, I think these streaming services, Netflix specifically, is catering to the market that they have, which is, the younger people, the younger millennial generation, 18 to 25, college, freshly out of college. And for us, our trends are very aesthetic, and they're very curated to how we look, and social media, what we're watching, what we're digesting. And I'm sure, that data information is coming in pretty handy. But I've noticed there are tons of shows about the physical appearance, and there are tons of social media shows, dating shows, catfish shows, true crimes. It's a huge thing right now. So that's popular right now. When we come back, I will talk a little bit about this small little comedian we were watching yesterday. I keep messing up her name. Ever since I started watching her, I've called her Eliza Schlesinger, but it's Schlesinger. Eliza Schlesinger, and I just figured that out today. But she came out with a new comedy special, and I love, the Netflix comedy specials. And I sat down with my partner and I watched it last night. It's her 4th show. It's called Unveiled, because she just got married. So we'll dive into that when we come back. Stay right here with the GSMC TV podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello! Okay, we're back, and on the last segment I talked about Next in Fashion with Tan France, a new Netflix series. This is all kind of, this is a big Netflix show because Miss Americana is coming to Netflix, and that's the Taylor Swift documentary. and Next in Fashion is coming to Netflix as well, and that's a Netflix thing. And now we're talking about a Netflix comedy special. I feel like the world is just revolving around Netflix. I feel like even if there are, other streaming platforms, it's just Netflix is still like a top competitor. Whenever you think of like binging stuff, you think of Netflix. You don't think of like, ooh, I'm going to Hulu and chill. It's just like, I'm going to Netflix, I'm going to binge Netflix. I'm not going to Amazon Prime and chill. I'm going to Netflix and chill. So Netflix is, still leading the pack up there with bingeable content. But last night, to celebrate, our first kind of relaxing evening, I said, do you want to sit down and watch a movie to Tyler? And we ended up watching a comedy special. And we watched Eliza Schlesinger's show. And it's her 4th show. Every single time she comes out with a new comedy special, I watch it because she's funny and she's just like a breath of fresh air. And I started watching her, I think, when I was in my first year of college. Like, we're in 2020 now. That was like 6 years ago. And she was like a spitfire. And I really liked how empowering her comedy was. She was the first to kind of jump on the I'm going to date, but I'm not going to, fall prey to the system thing. She was very empowered as a woman. She was super fun to watch. And she made me feel, I don't have to be a slave to like being a woman. I didn't ask to be born, and I didn't ask to be born a woman, but here I am. So let's make the most of it. So over the course of 4 comedy specials, she went through, being single, being on the dating scene, and then finally now she's married, and that's why it's called Unveiled. And throughout this whole comedy special, she goes through everything that she's learned while planning her wedding, nuptials that she's ditched, and just reflections on society and why men are misunderstood and how we can better understand them. So, not to give away, too much of it. If you like comedy, go watch it. But she didn't wear a veil, and she gives very specific reasons why she didn't wear a veil. She didn't wear a garter, and she didn't have a bachelorette party. And the no veil, no garter thing, I can totally hop on board with. The garter is, a weird-ass tradition of putting a garter up your leg and then having, your new partner ripping it off with their teeth. And when I was young and naive, I was totally on top and on board with having that in my wedding. But as I get older, it's like, we can skip on a couple of things, and I'm not huge on, I don't know exactly what the history is with the garter, but I'm kind of I would be a more liberal bride, I think, and I'm not one for old traditions. Same thing with the veil. I'm not really interested in having a veil. I'm really not even interested in, having, I want to be walked down the aisle by my mom, so I'm a pretty, liberal bride. But she goes into what the traditions were, which ones she could skip on, and she said, no bachelorette party, and she tells her stories in a funny way. And I was sitting here with my partner, and female comedians often get a bad rep for being, too aggressive or too pit bullish or, too feministic, or I don't know if that's exactly a word, but just too much. And I think telling a woman she's too much, I don't think I think that's a relative term, but often, female comedians go up there and they talk garbage about men, and for it to fall on young ears, you'll kind of grow up thinking, yeah, this lady's talking about, women are treated poorly, and kind of forms young minds. And I've been listening to her since I was just a baby out of high school. And so in this specific special it's different. I don't know if it's because she's married now, but she goes later on into, men and women, the differences between men and women, and why it's good that men are wired differently, and how women are wired more cerebrally, and, although we give them a hard time, how men really don't see the things we see because they are wired more, physically, and all of these things women say about themselves. Women are super hard on themselves. We get judged by our appearance and by our ability to fit into a mold that wasn't cast for us, and it's like, if you want to be a mom and you want to be a hardworking woman, we're not going to make it easy on you. And that's not just men, that's society as a whole. Like, we want to have families and we want to have careers, but we can't have both without one thing failing. And it's like we're trying to, fit in this mold that was not built for us. But yet also society is like, you can't have both. You're not built for both. But we're trying to buck that system. And she says, as women progress in society, instead of, being that girl who is always so quick to tear another woman down, in lieu of not being so sensitive, we can really show our strength. And the content of the show is really kind of fresh, and it kept my interest the whole time. And going back to talking about how men are cerebral and women are, or women are cerebral and men are not cerebral, they're more physical. Women think really hard, and men really, not that they don't think hard, they just think in different ways. And women are super, super hard on themselves, weight and being scrutinized in the media. But men who are, they think more simplistically, she says, the men, they love us and they don't see all the flaws that we see. And since they are such visual creatures, if they're with us, they love us. If they're with us, they don't see all the things we see, all the flaws. And, oh, my legs aren't long enough. I'm not tan enough. My stomach's not flat enough. Like, men are visual creatures. So if they thought, it's kind of sounds bad, if they thought we were ugly, they wouldn't be with us, which kind of got me scratching my head a little bit, because it kind of sounded weird to me. But overall, it's just, it's not an angry comedian shouting at a group of men all night. It's a pretty refreshing perspective on the fact that men are human, women are human, and she's moving to a different stage in her life. And if you've seen her other specials, it's right on par, funny with the stories of everything else she does. She's always been one of my favorites. So that was her 4th show. It's called Unveiled. It's on Netflix right now. Really great messages. Content language warning if you're watching around children. But if you're not, super funny. Crack open a glass. So when we come back, we will be talking about the Aaron Hernandez Netflix special. So Aaron Hernandez was a Patriots player. And a Netflix crime documentary just came out about everything surrounding his case, a drive-by shooting, him going to jail, and committing suicide in jail, and a whole expose, bingeable crime documentary, 3-part crime documentary has been released about him. So we'll get a little bit into that whenever we come back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Okay, so part 4 in my Netflix episode, the Aaron Hernandez Netflix special, Killer Inside the Mind of Aaron Hernandez. And I'm just gonna, give a quick tidbit. When is the Netflix crime wave gonna end? Because there's, reality TV, there's cringy, edgy drama series, and there's crime content. There's not enough reality for me to stay sane. There's too much crime content because I don't want to watch this stuff, especially being in America right now. Like I don't want to constantly think, I don't want to be any more weary of people than I already need to. So I stay away from that crime stuff. It just it gets my brain going. But there's a new Netflix special, and it does look really interesting. I probably won't watch it because I am the way I am, but, you never really know. Maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I'll have a couple of drinks and I'll watch it. But the Netflix special is much like all of the ones that you've seen in the past. This person is deceased, so they did a Ted Bundy one. They did Making a Murderer. And this one is on Patriots football player Aaron Hernandez. So he's a pro football player. He was. He was found guilty of a first-degree murder in 2015, so it was a drive-by shooting, double homicide. And he was thrown in jail. And in this documentary, all these people, the people he's known, ex-girlfriends, ex-partners are like, and they even interviewed his teammates. He was always angry. He was always, kind of a loose cannon getting ready to burst. And there were some secrets that he actually took with him to the grave. So he was in this paranoid kind of turbulent, inside it was like he was hiding these things, and eventually it came out that there's like a little, I don't know how to, skirt the issue. He had, he was outed on radio, like a national radio station about, being with a man and being a pro football player. That's rough. And being in prison at the time he took his life in 2017, and I guess it was 3 years in the making, but they just recently came out with this documentary about everything. And so they have, an ex-girlfriend, they have an ex-boyfriend, or an ex-lover, and in that way, it's very interesting to see how dangerous, toxic masculinity can be, and how fragile masculinity can be. And he took everything with him, like he's dead. And so that brings me to my next kind of thought. Whenever I see yet another Netflix special, maybe $1 million special being made about somebody committing horrendous crimes, it's like, should there really be like a business being made off of this about somebody who killed themselves because of their sexuality, because they couldn't live down the fact that they were gay, or like, what does that tell people? What does that tell, young people that are watching? Like, I'm going to have to hide this secret and ultimately kill myself. Like, that's the kind of, and what does it tell people who have committed crimes? If I go down in history, my parents are going to get all this money from me committing crimes if my crimes are like hideous enough. Like, I kind of question. There are people who commit these brutal crimes like Ted Bundy, and who knows where all that money is going from the Ted Bundy making a murderer, serial killer inside the mind of Ted Bundy. Like, those interviews and stuff, people are making basically money off of his murders, and I'm just not exactly, I don't know exactly how I feel about it, but it's certainly a genre, bingeable crime, and I feel like I was a super fan of crime whenever I was younger, and then it's like, oh my goodness, people are actually terrible. And so I moved on to, lighter things. I used to watch Criminal Minds all the time, and in the wake of the, Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, and, it became all too dark and a little bit too heavy, and I stopped, and I switched to, reality TV and, doctor shows, Grey's Anatomy, House, stuff like that. Things that I could maybe actually spend my time learning instead of, it building up in my mind that I don't want to leave my house. So that's that. Don't know if I'm going to watch this, but it's all over Twitter, and I guess people are, live tweeting as they watch it. So there are already tons of memes, tons of reactions, and they're pretty intriguing. So maybe I'll sit down and give it a go. If I do, it'll be, you'll be the first ones to know. So that's what I got for that. The Sabrina Part 3 trailer just dropped, and I'm hella excited because it comes out on the 24th, and that's like 7 days, and I'm to the wall excited. So we'll talk a little bit about first looks when we come back. Stay right here with the GSMC TV podcast. We'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Okay, so for those of you who watched Sabrina Part 2, you know that the series ended in a little bit of a darker note, totally 180 from, the Part 1, and I don't know if they have different directors. I haven't looked into that yet, but it seems like they might, because the first part to the second part to the third part, they're all night and day. And I realized that when watching the trailer for the third part. So the first part, is very light. Just, we know she's a witch. We know Sabrina's a witch. And for those of you who don't know anything about the series that I'm talking about, this is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So this is a very dark and edgy adaptation. It's not Sabrina the Teenage Witch that was on, Teen Nick. It's dark, and it deals with the underworld and Satan and Lucifer, all that, the Dark Lord, that's what they call him. And the actors are brilliant. Ross Lynch is in it. He's like, from Disney Channel to this, it's leaps and bounds. And I actually watched Teen Beach Movie, a couple of snippets of that, because he was so good in this. So the trailer just came out. The series is coming back on the 24th of January. And where we left off, Sabrina is now the goddess of the underworld. So she is dealing with all things hell. Her boyfriend, so she took a sharp turn from dating Harvey, and when we left off, they never got back together. He actually started dating Jazz Sinclair, or Roz. Their names are interchangeable for me for some reason. Her name is Roz. She's played by Jazz Sinclair. And so him and Roz got together, and I thought, this just has to be a bad dream, but it's not. It doesn't ever change. And Sabrina this is why I think the writing is absurd, but good. I've jumped right back on it after initial shock, but Sabrina is dating Nicholas, and he is banished to the underworld in the last episode. And so when we pick back up, this season, deals with Sabrina kind of having to be like the goddess of hell, and she's full witch. She's not half anymore. And that's where we pick back up. And in the trailer, it looks like Susie has a new love interest, which is super cute. Roz and Sabrina are on a cheer team, so I don't know if Sabrina goes back to her high school, but the trailer looks super promising. I'm really, really excited. We left on kind of a very different note. But it surprised me because this series actually captured my attention. I can't usually sit through anything. But I watched this in like a week. All the episodes. And I'm super excited for it. For those of you who aren't exactly familiar with the stars, it's Roz Lynch, Jazz Sinclair, and Kiernan Shipka. Kiernan Shipka plays Sabrina, and she was on so many things. She's been acting since she was like 2, and dancing since she was 5. She was in Mad Men. She was Sally Draper. And she was in Flowers in the Attic. That's the first thing I saw her in whenever I was younger. The book adaptation, or the movie adaptation of the book. So she's always, played these super, super deep characters. And so she started acting at like 5 months old. She was on the ER. Remember the ER? I remember the ER. The first Grey's Anatomy. But they've got, an all-star cast, and the latest season is going to deal with, Sabrina kind of having to go back and rescue her boyfriend from the underworld. And it'll also go deeper into, Ross and our Harvey's and, Roz's and Susie's stories. Susie, when we left off, she's transitioning. She was a female, and she's transitioning to a male. So I love the series because it's something, although it is an adaptation, they take, real life kind of issues that weren't exactly prominent in the 90s. So with the old series that was on Nick, you wouldn't get any LGBTQ issues. You wouldn't get a transgender character. You wouldn't get a character who goes blind. Roz goes blind in the series. It's a hereditary thing. Harvey has an abusive dad, and Susie is a transgender female to male character. It's I think also Sabrina they talk a lot about, her parents and her being orphaned, and they even talk about her virginity, which is a little bit of a weird flex, but okay. It's just, different. It's different, it's current, it's edgy, and it's super interesting. So that's coming back, and I'm super excited for that. Nicholas Scratch is now in the underworld. That was his name. His name is Nick Scratch. And Sabrina basically has to go and bring her boyfriend back. Hard turn from Harvey Kinkle, but will she bring him back? Who knows? 7 days. I'm probably going to binge it in like 3 days. So that's all I got for that. When we come back, final segment, we're going to be talking about Baby Yoda. And although The Mandalorian has been renewed for a second season, Baby Yoda, the controversial, binge-worthy kind of huge phenomenon, is being adapted into several toys. That was like my first episode. It was, The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda across the nation. Well, Baby Yoda has been picked up probably by Hasbro, and there are tons of toys coming out in May, but most prolific and a pretty smart business move, actually. Build-A-Bear is releasing, a Baby Yoda toy for your children to stuff and enjoy and dress up in pink sparkly dresses. So we'll talk a little bit about that and when that's supposed to roll out and kind of wrap up everything when we come back. So thanks for staying here. We'll be right back in a little bit with the GSMC TV podcast.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
I feel like even though it's been about 3 months since Skywalker, Mandalorian, Rise of the Sith has come out, Baby Yoda is still relevant. I still see, Baby Yoda memes. I think Baby Yoda is the new Pokemon meme, whenever his, mouth hung open. I feel like that's the Baby Yoda meme now. Pokemon, move over, Pikachu. Baby Yoda's in the house. But in all seriousness, he kind of, Baby Yoda's a cult character now. He's huge. And there's a song about freaking Baby Yoda. There's toys, there's memes, there's so many songs. And now he's coming to a Build-A-Bear near you. So the action figures, Hasbro probably jumped on this pretty quickly. Of course, the action figures are coming out in May. And I'm sure the Funko figures will follow shortly. But we're not talking about Hasbro action figures. We're not talking about plastic Baby Yoda. We're talking about 100% pure, cuddly, furry Yoda goodness. I'm talking plush. I'm talking, soft. Baby Yoda is coming to Build-A-Bear. A really good business scheme. Because the last time I went into a Build-A-Bear, it was a hot mess. So I don't know if they're just trying to get some foot traffic. It seems like a pretty good business plan to jump on, the top show of 2019. But Baby Yoda, they're going to have a Baby Yoda plush coming to Build-A-Bear, and you're going to get to, stuff it, dress it, eat it, take it home, make it talk, make it walk. I don't know the plan for if they're going to come out with a line of Star Wars clothes, but it's official. Baby Yoda is coming to Build-A-Bear. Don't know what it's going to look like. I feel like you really can't unless you get into that vinyl shit, you can't recreate the Baby Yoda cuteness. Like, it's going to be like a fluffy, dumbed down version of Baby Yoda, but really good business idea for Build-A-Bear. Really great. We're not exactly sure when this is going to roll out. We know the action figures will come out in May, but expect a ramp up and a sellout, because Baby Yoda's not going anywhere. The Mandalorian Season 2 has been confirmed, and there are, plot lines in the air. We know for sure that Season 2 revolves around the Mandalorian trying to find Baby Yoda's home planet, and since this is the hot topic of Season 2, maybe he'll even get a name, and there might even be more Baby Yodas. Like, I'm not even a huge, diehard fan, and I would sit through an episode just to see Baby Yoda. And I feel like that's, a big ethos thing for Disney. They were smart there. But keep an eye out for your Build-A-Bear. It's not just for kids anymore. I'm sure they'll see so much foot traffic. Smart business idea. All right, that's all I got for today. That's my little social media fun fact minute. Baby Yoda coming to Build-A-Bear. As always, like and subscribe. Let us know what you want to see. We have a Facebook and we have a Twitter. Go find us on Twitter. Let me know in those polls, what you want to hear, what you're watching. I live tweeted The Bachelor on Monday, so I'm a huge Bachelor fan. We have 3 more days. It's a Friday until the next Bachelor. So catch me there, or catch me next Wednesday. No, Sunday. Catch me Sunday, and then I'll be live tweeting Monday night. So as always, if you liked, comment, subscribe, let us know what we can do better. Stay tuning in. Thank you to our regular listeners. We want to hear what you want to hear. We want to interact with you. So interact with us on our social media, comment on our social media, give us a follow. And as always, stay cool, stay cozy, stay snacking, and we will see you next week. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.